panels in my life, and I've grown to loathe many parts of them. One of them is that we spend about half the time introducing each other, so we're not going to do that. You see their name tags, you see their bios in front of you. They have such a long resume in each case that it would take us a lot of time to get through them, so we're going to skip that and go right to the questions. And then we're going to try to leave plenty of time at the end for questions and back and forth and comments from the audience. So I might put a hard stop on the eloquence coming from the panel. So I think we're going to start the first question with Ed Morales, who wrote our excellent series of stories on Latino political engagement. And without focusing too much on history through the morning, I think we have to talk about it a little bit. And so you're reporting when you looked at Badillo and Ferrer and what happened to their attempts to break this barrier, and the many things that contributed to their success and their failure. To what extent was their Latino background part of their near success, and to what extent was it part of why they didn't quite get there? What was the real role played by the Latino part of their larger political character?
Okay, that's a good question. I feel that one of the problems, is this working?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can hear? One of the problems with Latino candidates is that there is a benefit to trying to harness the power of ethnic appeal in their candidacy. But at the same time, especially in the last 30 years, there's been so much rhetoric against minority issues as being special interest issues, especially, a lot of the studies that are done regarding voter behavior seem to indicate that particularly white voters do not vote for candidates that are identified strongly with an ethnic or a minority issue. So I think that the candidates have to play this double game of, on the one hand, yes, emphasizing that they are strongly identified with the community, and on the other, blunting it. And and that happens like a little sort of, it's a little easier for Latino candidates to fall into that trap or that double problem, because they're, the appeal that they can come across with can be a kind of a chameleon-esque appeal. That is, I pointed out in the article the way that Herman Badillo pronounced his name differently at different occasions to either emphasize or blunt his identity, and Fernando Ferrer did the same thing. The other thing as well is what I noticed in looking at it historically is the transition from post-war United States political narrative from one of ethnic succession, which meant that different groups that came up in our society could become hyphenated Americans and assimilate and then sort of establish their political power that way. And the emergence of national liberation movements in the late 60s and 1970s, which then had, much of the political power then in the Latino community then became identified with national liberation movements or identifying with African Americans, for instance, and then there was a big problem with African American and Latino alliances for obvious reasons, that we've discussed. So Latinos pretty much caught in the middle, Latino candidates, and in a way, probably a successful Latino candidate would have to, maybe it's a better time now that we're moving into where Latino identity is becoming clearer, and a Latino candidate, might be able to truly harness the electorate, which is more diverse than ever, as we also pointed out here.
And of course, anybody who wants to jump in at any point with a question or disagreement, please do so. But
I know you all disagree with
I'm sure they all do. We'll visit it later. Speaking of sort of the past and now moving to the present, one thing that Ed pointed out in his article is that Latino New Yorkers do have a fair amount of representation in government. There are, I think, 11 members of the city council that would report themselves to be of that heritage, and plenty of state senators and assembly people. Councilwoman Viverito, do you feel as though the the representation that Latinos in New York City have reflects accurately their political power? And do you feel that it has delivered for that community whatever representation is supposed to deliver? And if not, why not?
Well, good morning, everybody. This is, it's a tough, not a tough question, I guess it's a tough reality to face, that we have large numbers and we haven't really been able, I believe, to harness the full potential of that power. And I think, Ed talks a little bit about it in the articles in terms of maybe as to why that might be the case. But I think that when you talk about the city council, for instance, when you have the Black, Latino, Asian caucus being a majority of the council members, I still have to be self-critical, and I don't think that we have the level of leverage that you would expect or you would hope on certain issues. And I think that just speaking a little bit in terms of what the success of a candidate, a Latino candidate would be, everybody hears about this, crossover appeal, right, in terms of being able to speak in issues. Like I strongly identify as a Puerto Rican, a Boricua, born and raised, having Puerto Rican parents that were born and raised in New York, so I think I have the ability to understand both realities, but being strong, but also being able to discuss issues that have an appeal universally. So being able to talk about social equity, social justice issues, talking about creating an equal playing field, those are issues that I think can relate to any community regardless. And I think being able to do that successfully is something that any candidate will have to do. I think that at times what I've seen is that people do, and I would agree with Ed in terms of the characterization, is that we are more interested at times in our own personal success and maybe not figuring out how we can harness the strength and the power that we have in numbers. And that's something that frustrates me personally, to be honest, because I think that there's so much more that we could do. So I don't know what that is, and I don't know why that happens. I know that my interest is to work with others that have a different mindset and figuring out how we can build coalitions with African Americans, Asian Americans, and the diversity that we have in the city to really create a more equal playing field for everybody. So that's as much as I can say about that.
I think that raises the question about, and this is one of the things that Ed and I talked about when structuring the article, is when you talk about the purpose of identity politics, especially as it relates to Latinos in New York, is there an agenda that politics would take up? And when we talk about these larger coalitions and broader cross-cultural alliances, is that agenda distinct from what we would generally want, what everyone would want, or everyone would benefit from? Lucia Gomez, I wonder if you could talk about that. Do you feel like there are particular issues that unite Latinos, that speak to that group more than other people, or that, on the other hand, Latino politicians might be uniquely qualified to sort of champion or talk about?
No.
And no is an okay.
No. So I struggle a little bit with, having the hardcore politics in my brain. What is at the grain of all of this stuff? There's no Latino party chair in the Democratic Party. Latinos don't turn out to vote in some high areas of supposed, concentration. There's no focus by the party or by any, other, we try as much as we can as C3s to do what we got to do, but in terms of energizing the base, so I'm stuck on the structural issues that exist and why certain things are the way they are, and our issues. At the end of the day, we're all poor. We all, live I don't know about all of you, but paycheck by paycheck. Some people don't have a paycheck. A lot of people don't have a paycheck in many of the same neighborhoods that we try to turn out and that have high density of Latinos in many areas. Food pantries are jam-packed every week. Thousands of people. Thousands. I came in for a meeting while I had a line 3 blocks around waiting to get into the church. I was going in for a meeting at 8:30 in the morning, and they were waiting online since 5. to pick up a bag of amazing. I was like in the food market. I was like, wow, this is great. I want to come up with a bag. I'm not, but I mean, these are people's poverty, people's lack of jobs. You know, hard hit realities of life are the same across the board. That I mean, whether or not Black and Latino communities in particular are, you know, are hard hit, much harder than other communities, I still think it's about jobs, it's about food on the table. You know, I do think that there are elements of access that might be unique to certain communities that don't have language capabilities or know-how. But I think that in many, you know, in the Asian community, it's very similar. You know, especially new immigrant communities, or perhaps their network and their, you know, infrastructures internally as a community, perhaps because of the lack of like disbursement throughout the entire city, but pockets throughout the city. So geography has a element to do with this. Is different, but I think that at the core of all of our issues, when we sit down at the same table to talk about equity and talk about education, you know, Black and Latino communities have a lot of similarities, but when you talk about, you know, the Upper West Side and certain geographies, they also care about education. Perhaps different elements of education, you know, they want more than, you know, what they have right now. And we're struggling with getting more than, you know, getting over the hump in my neighborhood, over 8% of, you know, high school students, Black and Latinos that don't graduate. Only 8% graduate in a certain area. So demography, to certain extent, geography is destiny in many instances when it comes to certain issues. And I think that our issues are fundamental, right? Like education. Now, is immigration a huge, you know, issue? Yes, but it all comes down to they want immigration status so they can get better jobs, you know, so that they can feel like they have better access to things as a result of being able to have a better status. So I just think that overwhelmingly, I think there's a lot more issues that are American issues, that are our issues, that are everyone's issues across the world. You know, education, food, access to better lifestyle and better quality of life. And I don't think those things are unique to Latinos. Now, whether or not we want to take it as it's unique to us because of our geographies or our density or the way in which we kind of coalesce as a community in our neighborhoods, I don't see boundaries in those instances. I can cross, but then again, I'm from New Jersey, right? So I don't see, you know, going to Brooklyn or going to the Bronx as a major pain in the butt. Because I just grab the car, or I'm like, yeah, I'll take the train or Express. So it's different for me. But I have many of my members who it's a pain in the butt to get to 18th Street in my offices because they live in Washington Heights, and the one train and the even though Express, it takes 45 minutes, right?
So if the issues are fundamental, then I guess it begs the kind of like the meta question of, does it matter, and if so, why does it matter to have a mayor who is Latino or Latina? Does that matter to you personally? Does that matter to the community, to the growth of the city, or does it not matter anymore?
It matters.
I think it matters. It matters in many instances to me because I'm saying, dude, why not?
No.
Like, it's not like it matters to me alone by saying it has to be a Latino or you know, we should. I'm saying, well, why wouldn't it be? Like, why are we not getting to the point? And let's be honest, racially polarized voting exists in the city. It exists. I don't care what people tell me about people voted for Obama, but racially polarized voting exists in the city of New York, and unless other people can tell me otherwise, Latinos vote for Latinos hardcore at the local level. And you know, and given the situation, they will continue to do so. African Americans will continue to vote for African Americans, and given the situation, they will vote for an African American over any Latino anytime, and they would do the same thing in the white community anytime. Like, that's a hardcore reality. If that didn't exist, then I would say it's not a big deal. But because that exists, it's like, dude, come on. I mean, where are our numbers? And the hardcore reality is that the majority of Latinos are registered in the Democratic Party. And because majority of these elections are typically won in primaries, then if we're able to show hardcore numbers in a primary and win a candidate like Freddie, then is that enough to get us over the hump? And that's the question.